Rain hammered the streets of Gangnam as Lee Min-jun stumbled through the downpour, one hand pressed protectively against his swollen belly. 7 months pregnant and running on pure adrenaline, he spotted the sleek black Mercedes idling at the curb, tinted windows, luxury plates. His rideshare. It had to be. He wrenched open the door and collapsed into the back seat, gasping. "Thank God, please just." The words died in his throat. The man in the driver's seat turned slowly, and Min-jun's Omega instincts screamed danger. Sharp jawline. Cold eyes. A blood-red tie against an immaculate black suit. This wasn't a driver. This was a predator. Wrong car, Omega. The Alpha's voice was silk over steel. Before Min-jun could scramble back out, headlights flooded the interior. 3 black SUVs boxed them in, and armed men in tactical gear emerged, surrounding the Mercedes in a tight circle. Min-jun's heart hammered against his ribs. The Alpha, Kang Seo-jin, though Min-jun didn't know that yet, assessed the situation with unnerving calm. His gaze flicked to the Omega's rounded stomach, then to the insignia on the rival gang members' jackets. The Beck family. Here for blood. Seo-jin's jaw tightened. A pregnant Omega in his car during a gang confrontation. This complicated everything. "Listen carefully," Seo-jin said, his Alpha command thrumming through the confined space. "When they look inside, you're mine. Bonded. Marked. Carrying my child. Do you understand?" Min-jun's eyes widened. "What? No, Would you rather explain to them why you're really here?" Seo-jin's tone left no room for argument. Outside, boots crunched closer. "They'll smell your fear and think you're leverage. Play along, and we both survive this." The tap on the window came hard and deliberate. Seo-jin reached back, his hand finding Min-jun's. Their eyes met, predator and prey, Alpha and Omega, 2 strangers bound by circumstance and seconds from violence. "Trust me," Seo-jin whispered. "Just this once. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers and tell me where you're watching from." The window rolled down with a mechanical hum, and the scent of gunpowder and cheap cologne invaded the car. A man with a scarred face leaned down, his eyes scanning the interior with predatory interest. Kang Seo-jin. The name came out like a curse. "The Beck family wants a word." Seo-jin's expression remained carved from ice. "I'm not interested in conversation." Wasn't a request. The man's gaze shifted to Min-jun, lingering on his swollen belly. A slow smile spread across his face. Well, didn't know you had company. Who's the pretty Omega?" Before Min-jun could speak, Seo-jin moved with predatory speed. His hand shot back, fingers threading through Min-jun's damp hair, and he pulled the Omega forward between the seats. Min-jun gasped as Seo-jin's face buried against his throat, right where the scent gland pulsed beneath rain-chilled skin. The Alpha's breath was hot, deliberate. Then his lips pressed against Min-jun's neck, and the world tilted. Scent marking was supposed to be intimate, consensual, sacred. This was survival. But Min-jun's body didn't know the difference. The moment Seo-jin's pheromones flooded his system, dark cedar and smoke, dangerous and intoxicating, his Omega biology responded with devastating intensity. A small, involuntary sound escaped Min-jun's throat. His pregnancy hormones, already unstable, went haywire. The baby kicked hard against his ribs, as if sensing the Alpha's presence. Heat rushed through his body, and his hands clutched at Seo-jin's shoulder, trembling. Seo-jin's teeth grazed the sensitive gland, not biting, but the threat was clear. Acclaiming. A warning. His scent saturated Min-jun's skin, and when he finally pulled back, his eyes were darker, pupils blown wide with Alpha instinct. "Mine," Seo-jin growled, loud enough for the Beck soldier to hear. His hand slid possessively to Min-jun's stomach. "My Omega. My child. Does the Beck family make a habit of threatening bonded mates?" The scarred man's smile faltered. His eyes narrowed as he processed the scene. The Omega's flushed face, the scent of Alpha pheromones thick in the air, the protective hand splayed across the pregnant belly. The Omega was clearly affected, clearly claimed. "You never mentioned a mate," he said slowly. "I don't announce my private life to rival syndicates." Seo-jin's tone could cut glass. "Now remove your men from my vehicle, or explain to your boss why you started a war over a business meeting." Another figure appeared behind the scarred man, older, wearing an expensive suit that strained across his shoulders. His eyes were calculating, dangerous. Min-jun recognized the look of someone who'd killed without hesitation. "Kang Seo-jin," the older man said. "The untouchable. The ghost. And now a family man?" His laugh was cold. "How times change." "They do." Seo-jin's hand tightened fractionally on Min-jun's stomach, the gesture protective enough to be convincing. "I have more to protect now." That makes me more dangerous, not less. Ask yourself if you want to test that theory. The tension stretched like a wire ready to snap. Minjun could feel Seojin's heartbeat, steady, controlled, while his own raced out of control. The alpha pheromones were clouding his thoughts, making him feel safe when he should be terrified. His body wanted to nest, to press closer to the source of that commanding scent, too. No, he couldn't think like that. This was a performance. A lie. But his body didn't care. The older man's eyes moved between them, weighing options. Finally, he straightened. The Beck family will remember this. Your situation doesn't change our business. Then conduct your business through proper channels. Seojin's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. But understand this. You approached my car, surrounded my mate while he carries my child. If I see Beck colors near my family again, I won't ask questions. I'll just remove the threat. The promise of violence hung in the rain-soaked air. The older man studied Seojin for a long moment, then jerked his head toward the SUVs. We'll be in touch. The scarred soldier lingered, his gaze on Minjun predatory and speculative. Lucky Omega. Caught yourself a king. Seojin's hand moved to the door handle, the threat implicit. The window rose, sealing them back into the leather-scented sanctuary of the Mercedes. The armed men retreated to their vehicles, engines rumbling to life. Within moments, the convoy peeled away into the rain, leaving only the echo of danger behind. Silence crashed over the car. Minjun became acutely aware of how close he still was to Seojin. Half draped over the center console, the Alpha's hand still resting on his stomach, their faces inches apart. Seojin's scent clung to his skin like a brand, and every breath drew more of it into his lungs. His Omega instincts were screaming. Alpha, safety, protection mine. You can let go now, Minjun whispered, hating how his voice shook. Seojin's eyes focused on him, as if remembering he was real, not just a prop in a deadly game. His hand withdrew slowly, and the loss of contact made Minjun's stomach clench. Whether from fear or something more dangerous, he couldn't tell. They're gone, Seojin said. His voice was rougher now, affected. For now. Minjun scrambled back into the passenger seat, putting distance between them. His hands shook as he pressed them against his belly, trying to calm the baby's restless movements. His neck burned where Seojin had marked him, the Alpha's scent still overwhelming. What just happened? Minjun managed. I saved both our lives. Seojin's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The Beck family doesn't back down. They would have used you as leverage or worse. The only thing they respect is power and possession. So you possessed me. I claimed you. Seojin's jaw tightened. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Minjun's voice cracked. He'd escaped one Alpha's control only to fall into another's. His eyes burned with frustrated tears. I just wanted to get away. I needed to be safe. Seojin turned to face him fully, and for the first time, something other than cold calculation showed in those dark eyes. Something almost human. Safe from what? Minjun looked away, his hand protective over his stomach. Rain streaked down the windows, distorting the neon lights of Gangnam into watercolor blurs. He was trapped, in this car, in this lie, in the suffocating weight of an Alpha's scent that made his body betray every instinct to run. It doesn't matter now, Minjun whispered. Does it? I'm yours. That's what they think. That's what everyone will think. Seojin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried an edge of something Minjun couldn't identify. Regret, perhaps, or recognition. Yes, he said simply. That's exactly what they'll think. The car pulled away from the curb, and Minjun watched Soul blur past through rain-soaked glass, wondering what he'd just traded one prison for. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a building that pierced Seoul's skyline like a blade. Minjun stepped out of the private elevator into a space that belonged in architectural magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, minimalist furniture in blacks and grays, and security cameras hidden in every corner. It was beautiful. It was a fortress. It was a cage. Sit, Seojin said, gesturing to a leather sofa that probably cost more than Minjun's entire life savings. Don't move. I'm calling my physician. Minjun sank onto the sofa, his legs finally giving out. Adrenaline was leaving his system in waves, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion and the dull ache that came from running while 7 months pregnant. His wet hoodie clung to his skin, and he was shivering now, the reality of what just happened crashing over him. He'd been scent-marked by a MAFIA boss, claimed as a mate in front of rival gangsters. And now he was in the man's home with no phone, no plan, and no way out. The baby kicked, hard and insistent, as if to remind him, "You're not alone in this." Seo-jin moved through the space with predatory grace, phone pressed to his ear. Dr. Yoon. I need you here. Now. A pause. I don't care what you're doing. Cancel it. His eyes cut to Min-jun. I have a pregnant Omega who's been through significant stress. 7 months along, possibly in shock. Min-jun's hands tightened on his stomach. He wasn't in shock. He was terrified, which was different. 20 minutes later, a woman in her 50s arrived carrying a medical bag that looked like it could treat a small army. Dr. Yoon had silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen everything twice. She took one look at Min-jun's pale face and Seo-jin's hovering presence inside. Out, she told Seo-jin. He stays where I can see him. I'm examining a pregnant Omega, not negotiating a hostage situation. Dr. Yoon set her bag down with a decisive thump. You're pumping out alpha pheromones like a territorial wolf, and it's not helping. Doorway. That's as close as you get. Seo-jin's jaw tightened, but he moved to the doorway, arms crossed, eyes never leaving Min-jun. The alpha pheromones didn't diminish. If anything, they intensified, a possessive weight that made the air feel thick. Dr. Yoon knelt in front of Min-jun, her expression softening. I'm Dr. Yoon Mire. I've been Seo-jin's physician for 15 years, which means I'm used to unusual circumstances. Her voice was gentle, professional. What's your name, sweetheart? Min-jun, he whispered. Lee Min-jun. All right, Min-jun. I need to check you and the baby. Make sure everything's okay after tonight's excitement. She pulled out a stethoscope. Can you tell me how far along you are? 28 weeks. Almost 29. And your previous Omega health provider? Min-jun's throat tightened. I haven't seen one in 2 months. Dr. Yoon's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened with concern. I see. We'll fix that. Let me listen to your heartbeat first. The examination was thorough but gentle. Dr. Yoon checked Min-jun's blood pressure, elevated unsurprisingly, listened to his heart, then pressed the stethoscope against his swollen belly. The steady thump-thump-thump of the baby's heartbeat filled the quiet, and Min-jun felt tears prick his eyes. Still there. Still fighting. Still alive. Strong heartbeat, Dr. Yoon murmured. Your baby's a fighter. From the doorway, Seo-jin's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. His hands unclenched. Dr. Yoon pulled out a portable ultrasound device, warming the gel between her palms before applying it to Min-jun's stomach. The screen flickered to life, showing the grainy black and white image of a curled form. Tiny hands, the curve of a spine, a head tucked against a bent knee. There's your little one, Dr. Yoon said softly. Everything looks good. No signs of distress. Min-jun couldn't look away from the screen. His baby. His reason for running, for surviving, for enduring. The only thing in his life that was truly, completely his. However, Dr. Yoon continued, her tone turning serious, your blood pressure is concerning, you're underweight for this stage of pregnancy, and you're dehydrated. I'm going to run some blood work to check for deficiencies and any underlying issues. She glanced toward the doorway. Seo-jin, I'll need to take samples back to my lab. Do whatever's necessary. Dr. Yoon prepared the blood draw equipment, her movements efficient. As she tied the tourniquet around Min-jun's arm, she spoke quietly, her voice pitched low enough that only he could hear. Are you here willingly? Min-jun's eyes snapped to hers. The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Aye. He glanced at Seo-jin, who was watching them with predatory focus. It's complicated. That's not a yes. Dr. Yoon's hand on his arm was steady, grounding. I need to know if you're safe. Safe. What did that even mean anymore? Safe from the Choi family who'd isolated him, controlled him, made him doubt his own mind? Or safe from the MAFIA boss who'd marked him without permission and dragged him into a world of violence? I'm safer than I was an hour ago, Min-jun finally said. That's all I know. Dr. Yoon held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. The needle slid into his vein with practiced precision, and dark red blood filled the vial. She worked quickly, filling 3 vials before pressing gauze against the puncture site. Keep pressure on that, she instructed, then stood and faced Seo-jin. I'll have preliminary results by morning. Comprehensive panel by tomorrow afternoon. What's your assessment now? He's exhausted, malnourished, and his stress hormones are through the roof. Not ideal for a pregnancy at this stage. Dr. Yoon's tone turned hard. He needs rest, proper nutrition, and minimal stress. Which means you need to stop hovering like he's about to disappear. Seo-jin's eyes narrowed. He's my responsibility now. He's a person, not a possession. Dr. Yoon packed her equipment with sharp, precise movements. And if I find anything in his blood work that suggests abuse or forced bonding, you won't. Seo-jin's voice was cold. I didn't touch him until tonight. What you find will be from before. The doctor's expression shifted, from suspicion to grim understanding. She looked back at Min-jun, at the way he held himself small and guarded, at the shadows under his eyes that spoke of weeks of fear. I see, she said quietly. Then you have more to protect him from than just rival gangs. Seo-jin said nothing, but his alpha pheromones spiked, possessive, protective, dangerous. Dr. Yoon gathered her bag and crossed to the doorway. She paused beside Seo-jin, her voice pitched for his ears only, but Omega hearing was sharp, and Min-jun caught every word. Whatever you've gotten yourself into, be careful. A pregnant Omega with a traumatic history isn't a tool or a cover story. He's vulnerable, and if you're not prepared to actually protect him, you'll do more damage than good. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Dr. Yoon's eyes were hard. Because from where I'm standing, you just marked an Omega you don't know, claimed a child that isn't yours, and painted a target on both their backs. That's either brilliant strategy or spectacular stupidity, and I haven't decided which yet. She left without waiting for a response, the elevator doors closing with a soft chime. Silence settled over the penthouse. Seo-jin remained in the doorway, watching Min-jun with an intensity that made his skin prickle. The alpha's jaw was tight, his posture controlled, but there was something in his eyes, a conflict, a war between instinct and logic. You should rest, Seo-jin finally said. Guest room is down the hall. Second door. Min-jun stood slowly, his body aching. What happens now? Now! Seo-jin's expression was unreadable. Now you're mine until I figure out how to undo this without getting us both killed. The words should have felt like a threat. Instead, exhausted and terrified and still smelling like cedar and smoke, Min-jun felt something far more dangerous settle in his chest. Relief. Min-jun couldn't sleep. The guest room was larger than his entire apartment had been, with windows that overlooked Seoul's endless sprawl of lights. The bed was soft, the sheets expensive, and every instinct screamed that he didn't belong here. At 2 a.m, he gave up. He wrapped himself in the oversized robe he'd found in the bathroom and padded barefoot into the main living area, drawn by a sliver of light beneath a door. Seo-jin sat at a massive desk, illuminated by the blue glow of multiple monitors. He'd shed his jacket and tie, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and there was something almost human about him like this. Focused, tired, real. He looked up when Min-jun appeared in the doorway. Can't sleep? The baby won't settle. Min-jun's hand rested on his stomach, where small movements rippled beneath the surface. Or maybe I can't. I don't know anymore. Seo-jin studied him for a long moment, then gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. Sit. I'll make tea. You make tea? I'm a crime boss, not incompetent. There was the ghost of something in his voice, humor maybe or exhaustion wearing down his edges. The tea was green, fragrant, served in cups that probably cost more than Min-jun's monthly rent used to. They sat in silence, the city breathing beyond the windows, two strangers bound by a lie that felt increasingly real. Why were you running? Seo-jin asked quietly. Earlier. In the rain. What were you running from? Min-jun's hands tightened around the cup. He'd known this question was coming. Had dreaded it. Because speaking the truth out loud meant acknowledging what he'd barely admitted to himself. My fiancé, he finally said. The word tasted like ash. Choi Tae-hyun. Or, what I thought was my fiancé. Thought. Min-jun's laugh was broken. I thought a lot of things. That he loved me. That the isolation was protection. That the treatments were helping me. His voice cracked. I thought I was losing my mind. Seo-jin's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened on his cup. Tell me about the treatments. They started 2 months after we got engaged. Min-jun stared into his tea, watching the liquid tremble with his shaking hands. Pills twice a day. Injections every week. Tae-hyun said they were omega supplements, that they'd help me have a healthy pregnancy, make me a better mate. The doctors all agreed. His family doctors. What did they do to you? Made me compliant. Foggy. I stopped questioning things I should have questioned. Stopped fighting when I should have fought. The memories were fractured, viewed through a haze of chemical manipulation. I couldn't remember my friends' phone numbers. Couldn't focus long enough to read. But I could smile at family dinners and agree to whatever Tae-hyun wanted and let him. Min-jun's voice cut off. His free hand pressed against his mouth, holding back the sob that wanted to tear free. Let him what? Seo-jin's voice was dangerously soft. Touch me. Scent me. Bond me. The tears came now, hot and relentless. Even when I didn't want it. Especially when I didn't want it. But the drugs made everything distant, like I was watching it happen to someone else. And he'd say it was normal, that omegas were supposed to be receptive, that my resistance was just instinct needing to be trained out of me. The cup shattered in Seojin's hand. Minjun flinched at the sound. Seojin stared at his palm, at the tea and porcelain shards, and his expression was carved from ice and fury. Blood welled from a cut, but he didn't seem to notice. "Keep talking," Seojin said, his voice controlled in a way that suggested violence held on a leash. "I need to hear all of it. There's not much more to tell." Minjun wiped at his face with shaking hands. "I got pregnant. The treatments changed. Different pills, different injections. They said it was prenatal care. But I started waking up. Little by little. The fog cleared. And I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd left the apartment alone. Couldn't remember my mother's face. Couldn't remember choosing any of this. Your friends? Family? Gone. Taehyun said they didn't understand our bond. That they were jealous. That it was better if we had space from negative influences." Minjun's voice was hollow. "I believed him. I believed everything because the alternative was that I'd let someone do this to me willingly. You didn't let him do anything." Seojin stood abruptly, glass crunching under his shoes. "You were drugged. Manipulated. That's not consent, Minjun. That's trafficking." The word landed like a blow. "No." Minjun shook his head, desperate denial rising. "No, we were engaged. He said he loved me. He isolated you from everyone who could have protected you. Drugged you into compliance. Forced a bond you weren't capable of refusing." Seojin's hands clenched at his sides, blood dripping from the forgotten cut. "He impregnated you while you were chemically restrained. What would you call that?" Minjun couldn't breathe. The truth was crushing his chest, breaking something fundamental inside him. I thought it was my fault. That I was a bad omega. That I needed fixing. You never needed fixing." Seojin's voice was rough with barely contained rage. "You needed protection. And everyone who should have given it to you failed. How do you know?" Minjun looked up, meeting those dark eyes. "How do you know what trafficking looks like?" Seojin was silent for a long moment. Then he moved to the windows, his back to Minjun, shoulders rigid. "My mother," he said quietly. "She was trafficked. Sold by her own family to a crime syndicate when she was 19. Marked by an alpha twice her age. Bred like livestock for 11 years until she died giving birth to my youngest brother." Minjun's breath caught. "I was 12. Seojin's voice was devoid of emotion, which made it worse somehow. Old enough to understand what was happening, but too young to stop it. I watched her fade. Watched the drugs make her compliant. Watched her stop fighting. And when she finally died, my father replaced her within a month. Seojin, I swore I'd never let it happen to anyone else. That I'd burn down every operation that trafficked omegas. That I'd make this city safer, even if I had to do it from the shadows." He turned back to face Minjun, and his eyes were haunted. "But I'm still finding them. Still too late. Still watching omegas who've been broken by men who should have protected them." "You saved me tonight," Minjun whispered. "I marked you without permission. I'm not a hero, Minjun. You gave me a choice. When those men surrounded the car, you asked me to trust you. You didn't force." Minjun stood slowly, his hand protective over his belly. Taehyun never asked. Not once. Seojin's jaw worked. The alpha pheromones in the room were chaotic, rage and protectiveness and something darker, something that spoke of vengeance. "The Choi family," Seojin said slowly. "That's who you were running from. Choi Taehyun." Minjun nodded. "I know that name." Seojin's expression turned predatory. "My organization has been tracking unusual omega disappearances in Gangnam. High-profile engagements that end in isolation. Omegas who drop off the grid. The pattern pointed to several wealthy families, but we couldn't prove coordination." His eyes locked on Minjun. "You're not the first, are you?" "I don't know. I never saw other omegas. But the doctors, they were too practiced. Too efficient. Like they'd done this many times before." Seojin crossed the room, careful not to crowd Minjun, but close enough that his presence was solid grounding. "Will you let Dr. Yoon analyze your blood? Really analyze it? Document what they gave you. Why? Because evidence is ammunition. Because other omegas are still trapped. Because," Seojin's voice dropped raw and honest, "because my mother never got justice. But maybe you can." Minjun looked at this dangerous man who'd accidentally become his protector, who carried his own ghosts, who understood in ways nobody else could. The baby kicked as if voting. "Yes," Minjun said. "Analyze everything. Document it all. If I can help someone else escape." His voice strengthened. "Then maybe this nightmare means something." Seojin's expression shifted, respect, determination, and something fiercer. "Then we go to war. Together. Together, Minjun echoed, and felt the words settle into truth. Before I tell you what happens next, subscribe to Starry-Eyed Lovers, and tell me where you're watching from. Dr. Yoon's preliminary results arrived at dawn, delivered by encrypted messenger. Seo-jin read them in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. When he finally looked up, Minjun was standing in the doorway, drawn by some instinct he couldn't name. Tell me, Minjun said. 3 different suppression drugs. 2 bonding accelerants. 1 hormonal manipulator that's been banned in Korea for 15 years. Seo-jin's voice was clinical, but rage simmered beneath. The combination is designed to override Omega autonomy while maintaining the appearance of consent. You were being chemically controlled, Minjun. Every moment of it. Minjun sank into the nearest chair. Hearing it confirmed was different than suspecting. The proof made it real, made it undeniable, made it a violation he could no longer rationalize away. There's more, Seo-jin continued. The drugs came from a private pharmaceutical supplier in Gangnam. Very exclusive client list. Dr. Yoon recognized the signature. She's seen it before in other cases. Other Omegas. Yes. The word hung between them, heavy with implication. By midday, Seo-jin's office had transformed into a war room. 3 of his most trusted people arrived. Jin-ho, his head of security, a scarred alpha built like a tank. Hae-won, his intelligence analyst, a sharp-eyed beta who could hack anything. And Young-mi, his legal advisor, an Omega woman in her 40s who'd survived her own trafficking situation years ago. They spread documents across the massive desk, photographs, financial records, medical files, surveillance footage. A web of connections that made Minjun's stomach turn. The Choi family owns 17 properties across Seoul, Hae-won explained, her fingers flying across a tablet. Officially, they're in real estate development. But 6 of those properties have unusually high security for residential buildings, restricted access, and medical supply deliveries that don't match any registered clinic. Jin-ho tapped a photograph. This building in Gangnam. We've had eyes on it for 3 weeks. Omega activity, but no one ever leaves. Groceries delivered, medical personnel coming and going, but the Omegas themselves? Ghosts. How many? Minjun's voice was barely a whisper. We count 12 distinct Omega signatures in that building alone, Young-mi said gently. If the pattern holds across all 6 secured properties. 72, Seo-jin finished. Minimum. Possibly more. The number stole Minjun's breath. 72 Omegas, trapped like he'd been trapped. Drugged like he'd been drugged. Some pregnant, some already with children, all of them thinking they'd chosen this life. The pharmaceutical connection goes deeper. Hae-won pulled up financial records. The Choi family has partial ownership in the supplier. They also fund a private Omega wellness clinic, exclusively for engaged or mated Omegas from wealthy families. That's where the drugs are prescribed, all perfectly legal on paper. Let me guess, Seo-jin's tone was acid. The clinic's medical director? Dr. Han Sung-woo. 48, licensed for 20 years, and not a single complaint on his record. Hae-won's expression was grim. Because his patients don't remember enough to complain. Minjun's hands fisted in his lap. I saw him. Every week. He told me I was doing so well, that the treatments were working perfectly. A bitter laugh escaped. He was right. They were working exactly as designed. Young-mi moved to sit beside Minjun, her presence a quiet solidarity. I went to a clinic like that. Different name, same system. They make you believe you're being cared for while they're erasing you piece by piece. How did you get out? Minjun asked. My younger brother kicked down the door and carried me out. Young-mi's smile was sad. I was lucky. Most Omegas don't have someone looking for them. Because the system isolates them first, Seo-jin said. Look at the pattern. Target vulnerable Omegas. Recent transplants to Seoul, those estranged from family, ones without strong support networks. Court them through legitimate channels. Get them engaged. Then slowly remove every connection until the alpha and his family are their entire world. The engagement period averages 8 months, Hae-won added, pulling up a timeline. That's how long it takes to achieve full chemical dependence and psychological conditioning. After that, pregnancy. And then, she pulled up another document, and Minjun's blood went cold. It was a contract. Legal, notarized, horrifying. The language was clinical, dressed up in terms like Omega wellness and family planning. But the meaning was clear. Upon giving birth, the Omega would be evaluated for continued partnership suitability. What does that mean? Minjun demanded, though some part of him already knew. It means they decide if you're worth keeping, Jin-ho said bluntly. If the child is healthy, if you're still compliant, if you can be impregnated again. If not, discarded. Young-mi finished softly. relocated to a recovery facility, which is really just a warehouse where they keep omegas too broken or too resistant to be useful. Heavily medicated, minimally cared for, forgotten. Minjun's hand pressed against his stomach, protective and desperate. I never signed anything like that. You might have. Seojin's jaw was tight. Under sedation. Or the drugs made you forget. Or they simply forged your signature. These families have enough power to make documents say whatever they want. Haewon pulled up security footage, grainy, taken from a distance. Minjun recognized the location immediately. The Choi family estate, the palatial house where he'd lived for 8 months. The timestamp was from 4 days ago. 2 figures appeared on screen. Choi Tae-hyun, Minjun's supposed fiancé, and Dr. Han carrying a medical bag. We intercepted their conversation, Haewon said, typing. Audio crackled to life. Evaluation scheduled for after delivery. The omega has been increasingly resistant. Dosage adjustments aren't holding. Taehyun's voice, cold and clinical. Then we terminate the arrangement. The child is what matters. Process the omega for facility transfer the day after birth. And if there are complications during delivery, then the problem solves itself. The recording ended. Minjun couldn't breathe. The room spun, reality fracturing around him. He'd been scheduled for disposal. For erasure. His baby would have been taken, and he would have been drugged into a living death, locked away and forgotten. When did I run? He asked, voice hollow. When did I get away? According to our timeline, you escaped 2 days after that conversation, Seojin said quietly. Your due date is in 6 weeks? 7. You were a week away from scheduled evaluation. Seojin's hand curled into a fist on the desk. You saved yourself, Minjun. And your child. If you'd stayed even 3 more days. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Youngmi's hand found Minjun's, squeezing gently. You're safe now. That's what matters. But they're not. Minjun looked at the photographs spread across the desk. Buildings holding invisible prisoners. Omegas who didn't even know they needed saving. All those others. They're still there. Still being drugged. Still being. His voice broke. Seojin stood, his presence commanding and fierce. Then we get them out. All of them. But we need to be smart. These families have connections. Police, politicians, judges. If we move too fast, they'll scatter like roaches, cover their tracks, and we'll never find all the omegas. What's the play? Jinho asked. Evidence. Documentation. Testimony. Seojin's eyes found Minjun. We build a case so airtight that even their bought judges can't dismiss it. We expose every doctor, every alpha, every family involved. And then we burn their empire to ash. How long will that take? Minjun demanded. Because those omegas don't have time. Some of them are probably pregnant right now, probably counting down to their own disposal. 3 weeks, Haewon said. Maybe 4. To gather everything we need, to coordinate with the few law enforcement contacts we can trust, to prepare a simultaneous raid on all locations. That's too long. Minjun stood, his hand protective over his belly, his voice stronger than it had been in months. What if we gave them a target they couldn't ignore? What if I testified now? Publicly? They'd kill you, Seojin said flatly. They're going to try anyway. Minjun met his gaze, unflinching. But if my testimony is already public, already documented, already out there, killing me doesn't make it go away. It just proves I was telling the truth. The room fell silent. Youngmi's expression was torn between admiration and horror. Jinho looked thoughtful. Haewon was already typing, calculating odds. Seojin studied Minjun with something that might have been pride. You'd be painting a target on yourself that would never come off, he said. I already have one. Minjun's hand tightened on his stomach. The difference is, this time I choose to put it there. For a reason. To save others. That's not the same as being a victim. Seojin crossed the room, stopping just short of touching, his presence solid and grounding. If we do this, there's no going back. Your life changes forever. My life already changed. Minjun looked up at him, this dangerous alpha who'd accidentally become his protector, his ally, his hope. Let's make sure it changes into something that matters. Seojin held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we go public. And we make them pay. The safe house visit changed everything. Seeing 17 other omegas, some pregnant, some nursing newborns, all carrying the same haunted look Minjun saw in his mirror, made the abstract concrete. These weren't statistics or case files. They were people who'd survived the same nightmare, who understood in ways no one else could. When they returned to the penthouse that evening, Seojin poured 2 glasses of water and gestured for Minjun to sit. The city glittered beyond the windows, beautiful and oblivious to the darkness thriving in its shadows. I need to be honest with you about what comes next, Seojin said, his tone careful in a way it rarely was. You have options, Minjun, real ones. Not the illusion of choice that Taehyun gave you. Minjun's hands wrapped around the glass, seeking its solid coolness. I'm listening. Option 1, you disappear. Seojin pulled a folder from his desk drawer, setting it between them. New identity, new documents, financial accounts established in your name. Enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life. We move you to Busan or Jeju, or anywhere you want. You have the baby in safety. You build a new life completely disconnected from Seoul, from the Choi family, from all of this. Minjun stared at the folder. Freedom, anonymity, safety. Everything he'd been running toward when he'd stumbled into that Mercedes. And option 2? You stay. You fight. Seojin's expression was grave. You testify publicly about what happened to you. You become the face of this investigation. We use your story to expose the trafficking network, to bring down the families involved, to save the others still trapped. That doesn't sound like a choice, Minjun said quietly. That sounds like you're describing a war. I am. Seojin leaned forward, his intensity focused entirely on Minjun. Because that's what it will be. The Choi family won't go quietly. Neither will the other families we expose. They'll come after you with everything they have, legal teams, character assassination, attempts on your life. You'll need security everywhere you go. You'll never have privacy again. Every moment of your trauma will be examined in public. And the baby? Protected. Always. I give you my word. Seojin's voice carried the weight of an alpha's promise. But she'll grow up knowing her mother is a target. That's not fair to either of you. Minjun looked down at his stomach, at the subtle movements rippling beneath his skin. His daughter, innocent and unknowing, carried in the body of someone who'd been violated in ways he was still processing. What kind of life was he choosing for her? Why are you giving me this choice? Minjun asked. You need testimony to build your case. Without me, you don't have a survivor willing to speak publicly. I have 17 others at the safe house. Seojin's jaw tightened. I won't force you into this, Minjun. I won't make you into a weapon in someone else's war. You've had enough choices stolen from you. This one is yours completely. The sincerity in his voice was almost painful. Minjun had forgotten what it felt like to have someone prioritize his well-being over their own agenda. The sensation was foreign, overwhelming. What would you do? Minjun asked. If you were me? That's not fair. Why not? Because I'm not an Omega who's been trafficked. I'm not pregnant and vulnerable. I'm not. Seojin stopped, his frustration visible. I can't tell you what to do, Minjun. This has to be your choice. But you want me to fight. It wasn't a question. Seojin was quiet for a long moment, his expression conflicted. Finally, he nodded. Yes, because you're strong and articulate, and people will listen to you in ways they won't listen to me. Because your story is powerful enough to change laws, to shift how society sees Omega trafficking. Because, his voice dropped, rough with emotion. Because I think you deserve justice, and so does my mother, and so do those 72 Omegas still trapped. And if I choose to disappear instead, then I'll personally drive you to wherever you want to go. I'll make sure you're set up safely. I'll hunt down every person involved in your trafficking and make them pay, even without your testimony. Seojin's eyes held Minjun's. Your safety matters more than revenge. Always. Minjun believed him. That was the terrifying part. He actually believed this dangerous alpha would let him walk away, would protect him regardless, would wage war on his behalf without demanding anything in return. When had anyone ever offered him that? Can I ask you something? Minjun said. Anything. Those Omegas at the safe house. The ones who've already escaped. Why aren't they testifying? Seojin's expression turned carefully neutral. Some aren't ready. The trauma is too fresh, too raw. Some have children they're trying to protect. Some simply don't want to relive it publicly. He paused. And some tried. 2 years ago, an Omega named Jiwoo went public about her trafficking. She had evidence, testimony, everything needed for a conviction. What happened? The family's lawyers buried her in motions. Dragged out the case for 18 months. Portrayed her as mentally unstable, a gold digger, a liar. Seojin's hands fisted on the desk. She won eventually. But the stress triggered early labor. Her son was born at 26 weeks with complications. He didn't survive. Minjun's hand flew to his stomach, protective and instinctive. Jiwoo doesn't testify anymore, Seojin continued quietly. She lives in the safe house, helps other survivors, but she can't face the legal system again. And I don't blame her. That's why I'm telling you the cost. Because fighting might break you, Minjun. Even if we win. But if I don't fight, nothing changes. Other people can fight. Other survivors. My organization. You don't have to be the one who burns to light the way. Minjun stood slowly, crossing to the windows. Souls stretched endlessly before him, millions of lives intersecting in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Omega after Omega was being drugged into compliance, isolated from loved ones, prepared for disposal once their usefulness ended. He thought about the woman at the safe house who'd been discarded after giving birth to twins, dumped at a hospital with no memory of her own name. The Omega man who'd escaped with fractured ribs and a broken collarbone. The teenager who'd been trafficked at 19 and rescued at 23, for years of her life stolen. He thought about his daughter, growing in his body despite everything, fighting to exist in a world that had tried to erase her mother. I need to know something, Minjun said, his breath fogging the glass. If I fight, if I testify, if I become this public figure, will it actually save people? Or will it just make me feel better about what happened to me? Seojin stood, moving to stand beside him, not touching, but close enough that his presence was solid, grounding. Honestly, both. Your testimony will give law enforcement the ammunition they need to raid those facilities, to arrest the doctors, to shut down the pharmaceutical pipeline. We'll save lives. But you'll also reclaim your narrative, take power back from people who tried to erase you. There's no shame in that. And revenge. If you want revenge, I'll give it to you regardless of which choice you make. Seojin's voice carried lethal promise. But I don't think that's what drives you. What do you think drives me? The same thing that drove you to run in the rain while 7 months pregnant. Seojin turned to look at him, and his expression was almost gentle. Love. For your daughter. For yourself. For the person you could have been if they hadn't stolen your choices. Minjun's eyes burned with unshed tears. His hand splayed across his stomach, feeling his daughter move, feeling her trust that he would protect her, that he would make the right choice. If I do this, Minjun said slowly, I want it written down. In legal documents. That it's my choice. My decision. That no one forced me or manipulated me or drugged me into agreeing. Done. And I want to meet the prosecutors first. Look them in the eye. Make sure they understand what they're asking of me. I'll arrange it. And if at any point I change my mind, if the stress is too much, if my daughter's in danger, if I just can't anymore, I want the option to walk away. You'll always have that option. Seojin's promise was absolute. Always. Minjun took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision settle into his bones. Then I'll do it. I'll testify. I'll fight. He turned to face Seojin fully. Not for revenge. Not even really for justice. But because those Omegas at the safe house? They shouldn't have to be the only ones who escaped. They deserve better than hiding. And the ones still trapped deserve someone who'll speak their truth. Something shifted in Seojin's expression. Respect, admiration, something fiercer. You're extraordinary. You know that. I'm terrified. Bravery and terror aren't mutually exclusive. Seojin extended his hand. Partners. Minjun looked at the offered hand, at this alpha who'd given him real choices, who'd protected without possessing, who'd seen him at his most vulnerable and responded with strength. He took Seojin's hand. Partners. The handshake sealed more than an agreement. It sealed a promise, to fight together, to protect each other, to burn down the systems that had failed them both. The war had officially begun. The first warning came at 3 a.m. Jinho burst through Seojin's bedroom door, weapon drawn, face grim. They're coming. 15 vehicles. Maybe 40 men. ETA 6 minutes. Seojin was moving before the words finished, already reaching for his gun. Get Minjun to the safe room. Now! But Minjun was already standing in the hallway, woken by some primal instinct that screamed danger. His hand clutched his stomach, and even in the dim light, Seojin could see the fear in his eyes. It's them, isn't it? Minjun's voice was steady despite the terror. The Choi family found me. We're not letting them take you. Seojin crossed to him in 3 strides, his hands finding Minjun's shoulders. Safe room. Underground. Reinforced walls, separate exit. You'll be protected. How did they find me? Does it matter? Jinho was already moving toward them. We need to move. Now. The building's alarm system blared to life, a sound like screaming metal. Through the windows, headlights carved through the darkness, vehicles surrounding the building in a coordinated assault. These weren't amateurs. This was a military-style operation. Seojin's phone lit up with incoming reports. Haewon's voice crackled through. South Entrance breached. They have explosives. Police response time is 8 minutes. They paid someone off. 8 minutes. An eternity in a firefight. Safe room, Seojin commanded, but Minjun's face had gone pale, his hand pressed hard against his stomach. Something's wrong, Minjun whispered. What? The baby. His breath caught. Contractions. I'm having contractions. Time seemed to fracture. Seojin's alpha instincts surged. Protect, defend, shield. Warring with tactical logic that said they needed to move immediately. Jinho cursed, already speaking rapid fire into his radio, coordinating defensive positions. An explosion rocked the building. The penthouse shuddered, glass cracking in the windows. Somewhere below, gunfire erupted, the sharp crack of pistols, the deeper boom of shotguns. How far apart? Seojin demanded, his hands moving to support Minjun's weight. 5 minutes? Less. Panic threaded through Minjun's voice. It's too early. 7 weeks too early. She can't. She'll be fine. You'll both be fine. Seojin's voice carried absolute conviction, even as his mind raced through scenarios, all of them bad. Jinho, get Dr. Yoon on the line. Tell her we need a medical evac. No evac, Jinho interrupted, pressing a hand to his earpiece. They've got the airspace covered. Drones. Professional grade. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency red. Minjun cried out as another contraction seized him, his knees buckling. Seojin caught him, lifting him with alpha strength that made the Omega's weight feel like nothing. Safe room has medical supplies, Seojin said, already moving. We deliver the baby there if we have to. You can't be serious. I'm not letting them take you. Not now. Not ever. They made it to the reinforced elevator, just as the main doors blew inward. The sound was deafening, twisted metal, shattered glass, the roar of breaching charges. Through the smoke, figures emerged in tactical gear, faces hidden behind masks, weapons raised. Jinho returned fire, his shots precise and deadly. 2 attackers dropped. More took their place. The elevator doors closed, sealing them in steel silence as it descended into the building's heart. Minjun's breathing was ragged, sweat beading on his forehead. His hand found Seojin's, gripping with desperate strength. I'm scared, Minjun admitted. I know. Seojin's thumb stroked across his knuckles. But I've got you. Nothing's getting through me to hurt you or your daughter. The elevator opened into a corridor of reinforced concrete. The safe room was at the end, a bunker built to withstand anything short of a direct missile strike. Seojin carried Minjun inside, laying him on the medical cot that Youngmi had insisted they install. Above them, the battle raged. The walls were thick enough to muffle most sounds, but the vibrations carried through, explosions, gunfire, shouting. Seojin's earpiece crackled with updates. East Wing compromised. For casualties on our side. Unknown enemy losses. Jinho's voice was strained. Boss, they're pushing hard. They want the Omega bad. Hold them. Seojin was already pulling medical supplies from the cabinets, his hands steady despite the chaos. I don't care what it costs. Hold them. Minjun screamed as another contraction hit, harder and longer. His body arched off the cot, and when Seojin checked, his heart dropped. This wasn't false labor. This was real. The baby's coming, Seojin said, forcing calm into his voice. He hit speed dial for Dr. Yoon. Now. I'm 15 minutes out. Dr. Yoon's voice came through tinny and urgent. Keep him calm. Don't let him push yet. Don't let me push? Minjun's laugh was hysterical. Tell that to my body. Seojin's phone lit up with a video call. He almost declined, then saw the caller ID, Choi Taehyun. Against every instinct, he answered. Taehyun's face filled the screen, handsome, cold, entitled. Behind him, the Choi family estate. He was coordinating from a distance, staying safe while his hired guns did the work. Kong Seojin, Taehyun said smoothly. You're harboring stolen property. Minjun is a person, not property. He's my Omega, carrying my child, bound to me by legal engagement. Taehyun's smile was cruel. Return him now, and I'll call off the assault. You can walk away from this. Your Omega? Minjun's voice was raw but furious. I was never yours. You drugged me, raped me, planned to discard me like garbage. Taehyun's expression didn't change. Such dramatic language. We provided care, shelter, medical treatment. If you felt overwhelmed, that's unfortunate. But contracts were signed. The child is legally mine. The child is mine, Minjun snarled through another contraction. And you'll never touch her. Then you'll die in that bunker. Taehyun's voice went flat. Both of you. Because I'm not leaving without what belongs to me. Seojin's finger hovered over the disconnect button. Then he leaned close to the camera, his expression promising death. You want to know what separates us, Choi? His voice was soft, lethal. You see Omegas as things to own. I see them as people to protect. And I'm very, very good at protection. He ended the call. Above them, the battle intensified. An explosion strong enough to shake dust from the ceiling. Jinho's voice in his ear. Boss, they're bringing up heavy weapons. We can't hold much longer. What are your orders? Seojin looked at Minjun, sweating, terrified, in active labor. Then at the monitors showing his people fighting and dying to buy time. Every tactical instinct screamed to go up there, to lead his forces, to put a bullet between Taehyun's eyes. But Minjun's hand found his, and the Omega's eyes held a question. Will you stay? Fall back to secondary positions, Seojin ordered into his radio. Protect the safe room approaches. I'm staying with Minjun. Boss, they'll breach. I said I'm staying. Seojin's voice carried alpha command. Minjun needs me. That's final. He disconnected, tossing the earpiece aside, and turned his full attention to the Omega gasping through contractions on the cot. His hands found Minjun's, squeezing with strength and certainty. I'm here, Seojin said. I'm not leaving. Whatever happens up there, I choose you. Every time. Minjun's eyes filled with tears, fear and gratitude and something deeper. The baby. We'll be fine. You'll both be fine. Because I'm going to make sure of it. Dr. Yoon burst through the safe room door, medical bag in hand, her face grim but determined. Behind her, Youngmi carried additional supplies. Let's bring this baby into the world, Dr. Yoon said, already scrubbing her hands. And show the Choi family exactly what they're up against. Above them, the war raged on. But in the bunker, surrounded by reinforced walls and unwavering protection, Minjun pushed his daughter toward birth. Choosing life in the face of violence, choosing hope despite terror. And Seojin stayed, his hand never leaving Minjun's, his presence a wall between his Omega and the world that wanted to destroy him. The baby's first cry cut through the chaos like a blade of pure light. Minjun collapsed back against the cot, exhausted and sobbing, as Dr. Yoon lifted a tiny, perfect creature into the red emergency lighting. 7 weeks early but fighting, lungs strong, fists curled tight, face scrunched in outrage at being born into a war zone. She's perfect, Dr. Yoon said, her professional mask cracking into a genuine smile. Small but perfect. Good color, good tone, good cry. Seojin watched as the doctor cleaned and wrapped the baby in sterile cloth, his expression caught between wonder and something that looked dangerously like love. When Dr. Yoon placed the infant against Minjun's bare chest, the Omega's hands came up instinctively, cradling his daughter with trembling reverence. Hello, Minjun whispered, his voice broken with emotion. Hello, my brave girl. You made it. We both made it. The baby's eyes, dark and unfocused, seemed to find her father's face. Her tiny hand wrapped around Minjun's finger with surprising strength. In that moment, nothing else existed. Not the battle raging above, not the men trying to break through, not the trauma or fear or uncertainty. Just this, new life, fierce and determined, choosing to exist despite everything. Seojin's radio crackled. Jinho's voice rough with pain. Boss. They're retreating. Someone tipped the police. Real ones, not the bot ones. Full tactical response incoming. The Choi family's people are scattering. Casualties. 3 of ours dead. 7 wounded. Enemy losses significantly higher. A pause. We held them, boss. They didn't get through. Seojin's hand found the back of Minjun's neck, a gesture of comfort and pride. The Omega and baby? Both safe. Both perfect. The relief in Jinho's voice carried through the static. Good. That's good. Above them, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by sirens and shouted orders. The cavalry had arrived. Law enforcement that hadn't been paid off, drawn by something Seojin would learn about later. Hours passed in a haze. Dr. Yoon monitored mother and baby, declaring both stable despite the traumatic delivery. Youngmi arrived with supplies from the safe house, clothes, diapers, the soft things a newborn needed. The baby, Minjun named her Hyun, Summer Grace. Nursed hungrily, her survival instincts already sharp. By dawn, the penthouse was a crime scene. Forensic teams photographed blast damage and blood spatter. Bodies were removed in black bags. But the safe room remained untouched, a sanctuary where new life had bloomed in darkness. Haewon appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, her expression exhausted but triumphant. It's done. Everything. Every file, every recording, every piece of evidence. Sent to every major news outlet, every prosecutor's office, every human rights organization in Korea. Minjun looked up from where Hyun dozed against his chest. What do you mean? The assault triggered our contingency plan. Haewon's smile was sharp with satisfaction. The moment they breached the building, our systems automatically uploaded everything. The pharmaceutical records, the trafficking pipeline documentation, your testimony, the surveillance footage from the Choi estate. All of it. Seo-jin straightened from where he'd been slumped against the wall. How bad? For them? Catastrophic. Haewon pulled up news feeds. Headlines screamed across the screen. Omega trafficking ring exposed. Prominent families implicated. Dozens of victims still missing. Minjun's face filled one screen. A photo from his medical records, young and hopeful, taken before the drugs had hollowed him out. The caption read, "Survivor speaks out. 6 families named," Haewon continued. 17 alphas with arrest warrants issued. The pharmaceutical company's assets frozen. Dr. Han already in custody. She looked at Minjun. "Your testimony is everywhere. Everyone knows what they did to you." Minjun's arms tightened around Hayoon. The exposure he'd feared, the target he'd chosen to paint on himself, it had happened. Not in a controlled courtroom, but explosively, undeniably, in a way that couldn't be covered up or dismissed. "The other Omegas?" Minjun asked. "Raids started an hour ago. All 6 secured properties hit simultaneously. So far they've recovered 43 Omegas. Some in bad shape, but alive." Youngmi's voice was thick with emotion. "You saved them, Minjun. Your choice to fight, you saved them all." The words settled over the room like benediction. 3 people dead in the assault above. 43 lives saved in the raids. The math was brutal and clear. Over the next week, Minjun recovered in the safe house's medical wing. A real facility now, expanded with donations that flooded in after the story broke. Hayoon thrived despite her early arrival, gaining weight and strength with every day. The Omegas from the raids arrived in waves, broken and confused, many still detoxing from the drugs. Minjun met them when he could, shared his story, let them see Hayoon as proof that survival was possible. Some couldn't look at him. Others clung to him like a lifeline. All of them understood in ways the world never would. Choi Tae-hyun was arrested trying to flee to Japan. Dr. Han's medical license was permanently revoked. The pharmaceutical company faced criminal charges. 6 prominent families watched their empires crumble as prosecutors built airtight cases. And through it all, Seo-jin stayed. Not hovering, not possessing, just present. He held Hayoon when Minjun needed to sleep. Coordinated security when threats came. And they did, angry family members seeking revenge. Made sure Minjun ate, rested, had space to process everything. On the 10th day, Seo-jin sat beside Minjun's bed in the safe house, Hayoon sleeping peacefully in his arms. The MAFIA boss looked softer like this, holding an infant with surprising gentleness, his dangerous edges temporarily smoothed. "Can I ask you something?" Seo-jin said quietly. "Always. What do you want your life to look like now?" The question held no pressure, no expectation. Pure curiosity about Minjun's desires. "You're free. Truly free. The Choi family can't touch you. You have resources, protection, options. So what do you want?" Minjun considered the question. Really considered it, without fear or drugs or anyone else's agenda clouding his thoughts. What did he want? Not what he should want, or what would be smart, or what would keep him safest. What did Lee Minjun actually want? "I want to heal," Minjun said slowly. "Really heal, not just survive. I want to watch Hayoon grow up knowing she's wanted, knowing she's safe. I want to help other Omegas find their way out of the dark." He paused. "And I'd like to find out what we could be. You and me. Without the forced bonding, without the crisis, without all the external pressure." Seo-jin's expression shifted, hope carefully contained. "That's a lot of unknowns. I've had enough certainty to last a lifetime. All of it false." Minjun reached out, his hand finding Seo-jin's free one. "I'd like to find out, with time and honesty and choice. Real choice. The kind where I can walk away if it's not working, where you can do the same, where we figure it out together instead of having it forced on us." "That sounds terrifying," Seo-jin said, but his thumb stroked across Minjun's knuckles. "It sounds like freedom." Seo-jin looked down at Hayoon, at the infant who'd been born in a bunker during an assault, who'd survived because her father was brave enough to fight. When he looked back at Minjun, his rare, genuine smile appeared. Small, real, transformative. "Time, honesty, and choice," Seo-jin repeated. "You'll have all 3. For as long as you want them. No scent marking without permission. No alpha commands. No assumptions about what we are or what we'll become." His voice carried the weight of a promise. Just 2 people figuring it out, with a very determined baby along for the ride. Minjun laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in months. "She is determined, isn't she? Like her father." Hayoon stirred, making small sounds of protest. Seo-jin stood smoothly, bringing her to Minjun for nursing. As the baby latched, as life continued in its messy, imperfect way, Minjun felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Hope. Real, genuine, unforced hope. The trafficking ring was falling. The survivors were being freed. His daughter was healthy and strong. And beside him sat an alpha who'd chosen protection over possession, who'd given him the one thing he'd needed most. His own choices. His own future. His own life. Thank you, Minjun whispered. For what? For staying. When you could have pursued them. You chose me. Seojin's hand found his hair, gentle and grounding. Every time, Minjun. I'll choose you every time. And in the quiet dawn of their new beginning, surrounded by found family and hard-won freedom, Minjun believed him.